family background that was interested in art. My mother's a painter, and we grew up in that element. And then I think it was after a trip to America when I was 18 or 19, to Dallas, in fact, where I stayed for a year, that I then became interested in becoming an artist and pursuing that career. In my childhood, there was always, we often had, Cy Twombly was very much a presence in our house. He was my godfather. But I think also what influenced me a lot was that there was a period in the 70s when, as a boy, I used to stay at the Biennale a lot. And I remember particularly one Biennale with some pieces by Richard Tuttle and by Robert Smithson, and I remember at the time they influenced me a lot. And one piece in particular by Richard Tuttle, I remember, it was a very small piece of wood, and I remember the reaction, the rather hostile reaction that this piece of wood had on the public, and so it always fascinated me how art could have that potential, even with something so utterly simple as a little piece of plywood. This structure, it was initially made out of bars of plasticine that I'd bought in a local shop, and out of this I made a series of rather kind of domestic feeling temples, and then from there they were blown up in ceramic, like these colored bricks, and turned into larger pieces. And I think in a way it's domestic in the sense that it's a feeling of an interior space, an interior world that is being filled, like on a lazy afternoon. And it's also, in a way, there's a homage to a work of Guston, where he used books. In this case, they're not books, but there's obviously this part of his spirit in it. Because on my mother's side, I'm Virginian, and on my Italian side, I'm Roman, Venetian, and strangely, I think in my work, there's always a double strain coming both from America and both from Italy. There's a art historical strain which comes from growing up here and from growing up with older art around, and then there's, of course, maybe there's a freshness or a desire for something fresh which comes more from the American side. I must say that sculpture quite soon became what I worked with mostly, and also partly living in Umbria, which has a very strong tradition in terracotta and in ceramic, quickly led me in that direction. A small museum which has a side to it dedicated to the applied arts, I thought that a show in ceramic and glass would blend nicely with the environment that's here. So the title of this piece is it's not just a question of seaside resorts, and it's a little bit about the mood or the feeling of kind of it's like of growing up in an out-of-season Mediterranean resort. I went to elementary school in a local school in Portercole, and we had these classrooms which overlooked the sea. And we would study there with the grey sea in the background, and maybe it's there's associations of that in this piece. Also, what I find interesting is that I often change colors on these pieces, and as it were, the skin alters the meaning of the piece, and. So I'm also fascinated with that. The silver one being maybe more mysterious, more grand, the yellow one being gayer, maybe simpler at the same time. Well, with these glass pieces, in order to avoid a certain an excessive sort of decorative element in glass. I've tried to use very basic colors like green and transparent and amber. And here again, there were certain, some of these sculptures were influenced by, again, certain themes of the Odyssey. There was one famous scene in the Odyssey when Odysseus is given the bag of winds, and this bag of wind, then his crew opens and they are dispersed from then on. But this vase has something to do with that moment. These flags are made in Murano, and again they touch on some of the themes of the Odyssey, and certain themes of loss, of love, of direction, of loss of direction, of trying to find, maybe not finding, or the idea of coming back. And again, I use this very transparent glass, the purest glass, in order sort of to underline this, the extreme, almost the dreamlike nature of this returning home, and in a certain sense, even a figment of the imagination. And we're never quite sure if he's really going, or whether it's just something he's dreaming. And so this piece has to do a little bit with that state of mind. Well, this sculpture is, what I was interested in is, the snail has this, it was used as a symbol in antiquity, as a symbol for light, as a symbol almost of resurrection. And I loved, in a strange way, I love that symbolism. And to portray it also without its house was sort of accentuating its sort of utter fragility, but at the same time its strength, and it sort of plays on that. I think the sculpture plays on the idea of fragility, but also on the idea of strength. This wall was constructed in ceramic. It was initially taken from just a very simple the clay that you buy in the shops, and so in a sense, the wall is what the snail was then made out of, and so I like that association. Also, I use the colored block every now and then, and in a way, it's a bit of a homage to Mondrian. It's a homage also to the painting of the past. And I think in a lot of the works, there's always there's always a hint or a homage to some work of the past. Like, for example, this glass piece, which is in a sense, it's influenced by, there's a famous painting by Domenico Veneziano in Washington, and it's about St. John disrobing in the desert. And so it's about talking in the desert, it's about silence in the desert, it's about things being said and not said. And I think I was fascinated by the use of glass, of transparent glass, because as it were, it could underline this thought in a very sort of light, in a very light way.